Look at all these sentences with tag questions. My name is Alex, isn't it? I am 10, aren't I? I'm in grade 4, aren't I? I live in Syangja, don't I? My hobby is football, isn't it? I wanna be a teacher, don't I? There are 4 members in my family, aren't there? There's my mother, my father, my brother, and myself, aren't there? My mother is 32, isn't she? She's a doctor, isn't she? My father is 35, isn't he? He's a businessman, isn't he? My brother is 6, isn't he? He goes to school, doesn't he? I am 10, aren't I? I go to school too, don't I? Let's learn to make some tea, shall we? First of all, boil some water in a kettle, will you? Then add some sugar and milk, will you? Then add some tea dust to it, will you? Let's not add any salt, shall we? Now boil it for a while, will you? But don't boil it for too long, will you? At last it's ready, isn't it? Now pour it into cups, will you? Let's not wait to get it cold, shall we? So let's all start drinking now, shall we? Question tags are mainly used in speaking. They are small and weak questions, like tags of clothes or tails of some animals. Question tags come at the end of statements and imperative sentences. With statements, sentences starting with a subject and ending with a full stop. They rarely ask for an answer, but are mostly used for seeking approval. If there is a rising tone, it's for an answer, and if there is a falling tone, it's for just an agreement or an approval. Number 1. How do we form question tags for imperatives? All imperative sentences, both positive and negative, have will you as their question tags. For example, speak English all the time, will you? Don't speak English here, will you? Please speak English, will you? Never speak English again, will you? Number 2. How do we form question tags for sentences starting with let's? All sentences starting with let's, both positive and negative, have shall we as question tags. For example, let's speak English, shall we? Let's not speak English here, shall we? Number 3. How do we make question tags for statements? Positive statements have negative question tags and vice versa. For example, truth is beauty, isn't it? Thoughts and feelings aren't love, are they? Number 4. How do we contract the negative question tags? We contract them in the following way. Am becomes aren't, as in I'm in love with meditation, aren't I? Are becomes aren't, as in we are energy beings, aren't we? Is becomes isn't, as in he's an energy healer, isn't he? Was becomes wasn't, as in she was awake, wasn't she? Were becomes weren't, as in they were in sleep, weren't they? Will becomes won't, as in you will love freedom, won't you? Would becomes wouldn't, as in we'd like to have something, wouldn't we? Can becomes can't, as in you can choose to be happy, can't you? Could become couldn't, as in she could be enlightened, couldn't she? Shall becomes shan't, as in we shall overcome it someday, shan't we? Should become shouldn't, as in they should be here soon, shouldn't they? May becomes mayn't, as in we may leave now, mayn't we? Might becomes mightn't, as in it might rain, mightn't it? Must becomes mustn't, as in I must listen to my inner voice, mustn't doesn't I? Do becomes don't, as in we do need energy, don't we? Does becomes doesn't, as in she flies, does fly. And F16 doesn't she? Did becomes didn't, as in he studied, did study in MIT, didn't he? Have becomes haven't, as in we have lived in fear for many births, haven't we? Has becomes hasn't, as in he has learned coding, hasn't he? Had becomes hadn't, as in they had deceived themselves again, hadn't they? Number 5. What makes a sentence negative? Sentences with words like not, no, none, never, nothing, hardly, rarely, scarcely, etc. are negative, and so they have positive question tags. For example, you are not a beggar, are you? She knows no one there, does she? I have received none of your emails, have I? You will never see her again, will you? They hardly lived in joy, did they? You rarely have silence in your mind, do you? I scarcely know myself, do I? Number 6. What pronouns are used in question tags when subjects in the sentences are not pronouns? For singular third-person males, we use the pronoun he. For example, the boy enjoyed being alone, didn't he? For singular third-person females, we use the pronoun she. For example, the girl is taking after her mother, isn't she? For singular neuters, we use the pronoun it. For example, the inner sky was slowly filled with stars, wasn't it? For plural nouns of any other gender, we use the pronoun they. For example, thoughts are like trees growing in your mind, aren't they? Number 7. What pronouns are used in question tags when sentences have multiple subjects joined by and or as well as? Any subject joined with I or we becomes we. For example, you and I can leave them alone, can't we? Any subject except I and we joined with you becomes you. For example, he and you are friends, aren't you? Third person nouns or pronouns joined with one another become they. For example, he and she lived as friends, didn't they? What happens when we have singular subjects with words like every, each, no, neither, either, one, etc.? For subjects like these, we use they and also change the auxiliary verbs accordingly. For example, every person is responsible for their actions, aren't they? Neither was available, were they? Either Alex or his brother does it, don't they?